This is episode 1 of 7 for setting up a PHP API system using React as a front end. In this episode, we'll set up the backend of our full stack app using the Slim PHP framework. We create a basic Slim project, install all the necessary dependencies, and configure routing. We also configure the database connection using PDO and create the initial directory structure for controllers and services. Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of DevDrawer. Today we're going to be starting a new series. We're basically going to be going through and building in a React front-end application that uses a API that's built in PHP that's pulling from MySQL. So in this episode, we're actually going to be setting up the backend with PHP. So we're going to be setting up the foundation of the backend that will power the React front end. And then we're going to install and configure this environment in VS Code using an external MySQL database. Then we're going to set up a simple routing system using Slim. And then we're going to create the basic folder structure, so the public folder, source, routes, and controllers. So essentially, by the time we get done with this, we're going to be able to test an API endpoint. It's just going to display some JSON data that we have inside of the code. But we're just going to set it up and then run it and make sure that we can actually display the data. So let's get started. So first thing we need to do is create a folder for our API and then open that in the terminal. So let's open it in the terminal. And now we want to do composer require, which we're going to be using Slim for the actual API interface. Then we're going to be doing PSR implementation for the message handling. We're going to do the router middleware as well as Slim's error handling. So we're going to do Slim, and then we're going to do, I honestly have no idea how to say that. I'm going to say Nihalem, and then PSR7, and then Slim, PSR7, and then finally Slim HTTP. So Slim obviously is installing Slim. This is installing our message handling. This is installing the middleware, and then this is installing the error handling for Slim. So let's go ahead and run through all of that, and you'll see inside of this folder we now have the composer JSON that's been created, and it's going through and installing all of the packages for us. And now that it's done, we can open it up and we can see that we have these packages installed. I am currently running, I believe, 8.2 PHP, so, or 8.1. I need to update this, but your versioning will be dependent on your system. Like for example, if you try to do, I think if you're on 7.2, if you're still on there, you won't be able to use 4.14. Stuff like that. So it depends on the server that you have currently set up. And right now I'm using VS Code with PHP installed on Windows. So I'm not actually using a PHP server itself, like WAMP or an external server or anything like that. I'm only going to be using an external server for the database just because I want to be able to run the PHP code inside of VS Code. So I guess with that said, let's go ahead and start creating some of our folders that we're going to need. So let's do folder. We're going to, no, not there. I want to do it inside of this. So new folder, and we're just going to do a public folder. And inside of this, we're going to have a new file called index.php. So inside of this index.php, let's just set up a simple Slim router. So this is going to be like the initial setup code. So let's do use, and then we're going to do PSR, HTTP, message, and these are all going the wrong way. So HTTP, message, response, interface as response. And then we're going to do use PSR, HTTP, message, server, request, interface as request. And then finally, we're going to use slim factory app factory. Okay, so that should kind of get us started. Let's go ahead and do require, so we can do our autoloader. So we're going to do vendor autoload.php. And this is pretty much the same code that you would use on anything that you're doing with whenever you're importing or you're installing from Composer. So you're going to do the autoloader from the vendor folder. All right, so first let's create our app. And this is going to be app factory. And then we're going to create. And then inside of this, let's just create our first route. So we're going to do app get. And then this is just going to be the regular endpoint URL. All right, so let's do function, and we're going to pass in requests and response, and then any arguments that may go with that. And so I can show you all of the code. Now, so what we just wanted to do right now is we're going to do response get body, and then we're just going to write out hello world, and then we're just going to return that response. So now we have our first route set up. So now we're going to do app run, and then we can actually start. So we're inside of the API folder right now, so we can start it. We're just going to run it on the PHP local. So we're going to do PHP -s. So localhost and 8000 as the port. And we're going to run it out of this public folder that's right here, so it automatically knows that it needs to grab that index.php. Okay, so now if we open this, let's see, localhost 8000. Okay, so let's see. It's displaying what we want it to display, which is what we are looking for. And it opened up in another window. Okay, so now we have this where it's displaying hello world. It's essentially just if we, we're getting the /route. If we do something else like /API, obviously it's broken because there's nothing there. So right now we have this one route, and then everything is set up how we need to have it set up. So let's go ahead and close out of that for right now. I'm going to come over here, and inside of our Composer JSON file, we want to create our own source folder that'll load in like our database connection information, the routing, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to create our own autoloader that's here. So we're going to do autoload, and then PSR4. And then we're going to make this go to our actual controllers are going to be inside of the app itself. And they're going to be located inside of the source folder. Since we added this autoloader information, we need to now run composer dump autoload. So it will take that autoloader and make it the way we can reference this folder. So inside of our API folder, we're going to create a new folder called source. And then inside of this, we're going to create a new file called database.php. So inside of this, file, we're going to give it a namespace of app, because that's what we declared it in the autoloader. And then we're going to use PDO. And then we're going to do class database. And inside of this, we're going to create a few variables. So let's do private host, and then we're going to do private db private user, then we're going to do private password or pass, and then private character set. You don't necessarily need the character set, but I'm going to add it in here anyway. For the character set, we're just going to just use the normal one, so UTF-8 MB4. Now for my host, my database, username and password, all of these is going to be different for you. What I'm actually going to do is create an environment file so that that environment file can't be seen in this video. Alright, so I have set up my environment file. It's located in the API root folder, and in the index I'm essentially just calling it using a software that I installed using Composer. This isn't really part of this tutorial. If you want to set it up with an environment, I can probably do another tutorial for that, but I was using this just to simply hide the database connection information so that you wouldn't be able to see it while I'm doing it. But essentially you could just set these variables equals whatever you want them to equal, which is kind of like how I have it down here, and it would be able to do the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how we're going to test this connection. So let's create a new function here. So this is going to be a public function, and we're just going to call it connect. And then inside of this function, we're going to create a variable. I'm going to call it DSN, and then this is going to equal to the PDO connection information. So we're going to do MySQL host, and then we're going to have it equal to this host, which is grabbing this variable that's established up here. And then we're going to do db name equals this db. Let's go ahead and do our char set. So char set equals this char set. And then we need to finish that off by adding in the connection information and the username and password. So now that we have this, let me minimize this so we can see it. So that's going to be our connection information, and then we're going to throw in some options here. So let's create a variable called options. It's going to be an array, and we're going to do PDO attribute error mode. Okay. And then this is going to equal to PDO with an exception. Then we're going to do another one, PDO. I'm going to do the default fetch mode. Because we want to be able to fetch an associative array. And finally, we're going to do PDD emulate prepares and false. Okay, so now we're actually going to do the connection. So let's do a try catch to replicate any errors that we may have. So let's do try catch, and then we're going to pass in the PDO exception, exec exception. Okay, then the PDO exception, and now we have our try catch here. So let's do return new PDO. We're going to pass in our string, and then this user, this password, and then finally the options. Once we have that, if we have an error, we want to throw a new error. So we're going to throw a new exception. And we're just going to say database connection error. And then we can get that message. So get message. I need to throw correctly. Okay, so now we have our connection set up. So then we need to switch over to our index.php. And inside of this, we're going to do, well, I already did it in my test. So use app/database, because that's what we called our class. And then I'm going to add in a new function here that's going to be app get, and let's just do something like db test, and minimize this again. So function request response, and then args. So inside of this, we just want to test the connection. So let's first declare our new DB, and this is going to be equal to new database. And then we're going to do another try catch. It's hard to do this when I'm trying to watch the screen at the same time. All right, so now we have our try catch, and we're just going to do response get body, because we're going to be passing in we're just going to be passing in the text that we don't want it to display. So database connection failed, and then let's put in the error get message function. Okay, so now let's once we are able to grab the database, we're going to pass in connection, and it's going to be equal to db connect, and then we're going to do response body, not response body, get body again, and we're just going to write out again that the database was, so database connection was successful. So this, in theory, we should be able to run this route /db test. So if we come over here and we do /db test, undefined variable DNS, should be DSN here, DSN. Let's see. Last thing, return the response. So now we refresh, database connection was successful. So let's say if we didn't have the correct host in here. So let's say if we were doing 127.0.0.1, and then we go to refresh that, we should get an error. Connection could not be made because the target machine actively refused it, which it would do because that database doesn't exist on this machine. So let's go back to this. And now we have our database connection was successful. Okay, so I don't want to have all of this functionality built into the index.php, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another source folder, and I'm going to call it controllers. And I'm going to add in a test controller right now. So let's do test controller.php. And then inside of this test controller, we're just going to pass our initial page, as well as basically our test that we're doing right now. We're going to pass those from here directly. So inside of this index.php, I want to take this, and we're going to create a class, and we're going to use it. So we're going to do class test controller, and then we're going to pass, well, not pass it yet, we need to create a public function. So public function test database connection. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take this entire thing, and then I'll write out the public part of it. So this, so it's going to be public function, and get rid of this, and at the end we're good there. So we got public function, oh, we got to name it, so test database connection. So now we have our public function here inside of our class. So let's go ahead and create a namespace for this. This is going to be app controllers, and then we want to bring these over as well because we are using them inside of the function. So we're going to use that, and then we're also going to use our app, so app database. So now we have our test controller for that. So we can get rid of this in a minute. Let's go ahead and add this one in here as well. So we're going to do public function again, and let's call this one test index. And let's remove that. Okay, so now we have our test controller. It's responding how we want it to respond. So let's go and clean up our code over here. So we no longer need to bring in our app database because we're calling in the other one. So we're going to do controller test controllers / test controller. And then for this, instead of having where we're actually pulling out each one of these, we're just going to simplify it. So we really don't need any of this because we're going to pass in our test controller, and we're going to do the login, or not login, we're not there yet. Test index is what we called it, and then we're going to do the same thing for this. So let's get rid of all of the functionality there. We're going to be using the test controller, and this is going to be test database connection. Okay, so let's minimize that. So now we have our, let's say this is going to be basic route examples. So now we should, in theory, be able to refresh this test controller. Oh, I didn't define it. So test controller equals new test controller. Now we should be able to see that. And now if we go to our db test database connection. Okay, so now we cleaned up our index.php a little bit, and we're able to build a Slim, I can't even think of what it is right now, but basically we're using Slim to create this API interface for us. And this is what we're going to be calling. So whenever we go to use our React app, we're actually going to be calling localhost 8000, and we're going to be passing in the routes. So it'd be something like API items, and then that's actually going to pull back the items from our server after we get done creating them as well. But right now, I think that's going to do it for this tutorial. Stay tuned for the next tutorial that I got coming up. Let's see. Let me see what it actually is. So the next episode is going to be creating a RESTful API with PHP. So we're going to take this foundation that we've built, and we're going to actually build out these routes to hit these this database table. It's going to be a very simplistic table, basically like ID, name, description, and then we're going to use that to build the React front end, and I'll show you how to do all of that. So stay tuned for the next video, which hopefully will come out next week. And then once I get done doing all 7 of these videos and create an entire series out of them, I'll probably do a compilation so that you can see it from start to finish. I just didn't want to have a hour-long video or 2-hour-long video right out the gate. So if you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. If you want to talk about something that's involving this project, leave me a comment. If you have not become a subscriber, please subscribe, because I do have some more videos like this that's coming out, and it's going to be an interesting project. It's basically going to show you how to do PHP and React and how to kind of get them to work together to be able to display and create like an administration portal. I've done this before using like vanilla JavaScript and vanilla PHP, but now I'm kind of showing you how you can use these frameworks that are already kind of pre-built, do these kind of things. So hopefully you liked it, but I guess that'll do it for now. So I guess I'll talk to you later.